All right. So I'm going to take my palette or my plate and I'm going to put a little bit of green on it. And these are for those rolling hills in the background. So we're going to do just an outline for these rolling hills, and then we're going to come back to them. So you can take your big brush and we're going to just do a really narrow line just for the top of these hills, just to kind of get a little bit of a placeholder in. And we can always change the color of these hills. Now this paint is really thick, so just take a minute to kind of work it around, maybe kind of wipe it off your paintbrush on the side. Spending 10 seconds or so to kind of get this paint ready is a really good thing. And I'm wiping the paint off on the side. And I'm going to try to go for a nice thin brush stroke. So with this big brush, there's two ways you can hold it. You can hold your big brush on the side, so you have a wide brush stroke. But if you spin the brush on the edge, you have a more narrow brush stroke. We're going to do two lines, and we're going to hold our brush so there's a more narrow brush stroke. The first line we're going to do is right across the middle. I want you to do this as thin as possible, and you're just going to do just a light guiding line. This is the base of the forest in the distance, and I'm gently dragging this on. This is just a little guidance for us. This does not have to be thick and heavy. So a line right in the middle going across. And stick with me here. These next steps are going to be good for us. So I'm going to get a little more paint. I'm kind of wiping the thickness off the paintbrush so it's kind of manageable. And then I'm going to do about halfway, I'm going to do a rolling hill in the distance. So you can even do a mountain range. So coming up a little high. And if you wanted to use a smaller brush, you can for this, it doesn't matter. But we're just doing a nice high mountain range. So we're going to have blue sky above this, and we're going to build in some trees in here, but we're going to do that after. So these are just two baselines to get us going. And it doesn't need to be perfect. This is just to give us some framework. Okay. Now I'm going to keep this green brush handy. So everyone get your baseline in here, and you can see this is nice and soft. These are not solid in color. If they're solid in color for you, that's fine, but they don't need to be. I'm going to take this brush, I'm going to put it on a paper towel nearby because I'm going to use it again in just a minute. Now, I didn't send any blue paint, and you all are probably thinking, Megan, well, what the heck are we going to do for our sky? Some of you have done these classes before. You likely have blue in your house. So if you've done these classes before, you can grab a blue. If you haven't, we're just going to do like a light yellow sky. So don't worry too much. But if you do have a blue, just grab it. I made a choice to send you an ochre color as our 6th color instead of blue, because it's really going to add some really beautiful contrast to our birch trees. So I made a really fun decision to send you the ochre instead of the blue. All right, I'm going to go get the ochre. So get those lines in and hang tight. All right, so the next step is going to be really fun and different for us, okay? We are going to put that green brush down, and we are going to use our ochre. This is the darker yellow of the two. And we are going to use a tiny brush, and we're going to paint in, and I don't even think you need to use a pencil. We're just going to go for it today. We're going to do those birch trees and those yellow trees in the distance. So we're going to do this ochre first, and then we're going to brighten them with the lighter yellow after as a second step. So I grabbed a smaller size brush. You can pick and choose. It doesn't matter which size. You don't need your teeny tiny one, but I grabbed a number 5. I would say a 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever one you want. And I'm going to put some of the ochre on this. Now, these trees are fairly bright in the distance. If you want to get a little experimental, you could always take, and I always love challenging this group because you all like an experiment. Take a little dot of the yellow and put a little bit of the yellow in the ochre too. And we're going to mix those together. All right, I'm just going to adjust my screen here. All right, so we're gonna create these really fun birch trees, these yellow trees in the distance. And we're gonna paint our mountains around those. So the reason we're doing this is because I don't want you to run out of colors. And this color will stick out better on top of white versus painting this on top of green. We'd use a lot more paint. Personally, I just didn't want us to run out of white today. So that's why we're doing it this way. So we're just changing things up. Okay, so this is where we can have some fun. We're going to start in the middle and we're just going to do little dabs for little trees, little tree branches. And we're creating some trees in the distance. And I'm starting at the top and I'm not doing full brush strokes. Try painting with the tip of your brush and and you can leave some white space, but we're building a little bit of a tree here. See that? And it doesn't have to go all the way down to the bottom. We can put in a trunk. We're going to do some trees and use the tip of your brush to help with your texture. Just soft, gentle dabs. It does not have to be pointy at the top. It can be more rounded. So if I want a little bit more rounded at the top, that's fine. You can play with the shape of your tree. They can be long and lean. I just want you to be a little playful here. I might put in some shrubbery down here with this color. I want you to build in this tree line in the distance. Some of these trees can be a little taller. Some of them can be a little shorter. But we're creating this scene and we're going to fill in the green mountain in behind it. But this is going to make sure our trees really stand out. And you can leave some white specks. I'll bring this a little closer. I'm just doing gentle dabs. If you wanted to leave a little bit of white, you could. We're going to come in here and add in some like lighter yellows and oranges. If you don't like this color and you want your trees to be more bright, I'm going to make them a little bit brighter. But I want you to create this scene. We'll add in some oranges, but just create. Maybe you have some skinnier trees. They don't all have to be thick. We will be putting trunks on these trees. You can do a couple trees next to each other. I am purposely leaving a little bit of a gap down here because I want to create some nice shading for the trees to come and pop on top. So I'm doing that intentionally, leaving a little bit of a gap for the tree trunks on the bottom in some areas. So maybe down here, this one maybe will go down. But this is where you can experiment and you can be playful as you build this scene. And these birch trees, they can be a little bit bigger on top. They could be maples in the distance. You can use your imagination. But you can see I did a small one, I did a big one. And using the tip of your brush, versus painting with the tip of your brush versus painting with a solid brush stroke will give you some really fun textures. And we'll do more tree detail once we get the background on, but this is just a good start for our trees. And this one maybe over here will be a little lower. This is all impressionistic. So we're painting a tree line in the distance. We're going to have big white birch trunks on top of this whole painting. So this is just a fun detail for in the distance. So you can see I'm putting a little bit of shrubbery over here. This is going to be another skinny tree. This is just a series of trees in the distance. I love connecting a tree line with a little bit of shrubbery. It's kind of always really fun. Now this is where we can get playful. Oops, we have people waiting. All right. So this is where we can get playful. Play with your colors, okay? So if folks want to maybe try adding a touch of orange to some of the lower parts of your shrubs or your trees, you can take a tiny touch of red with yellow. Oops. So to make orange is, and for anyone that just joined, we just did a soft green outline straight across the middle. And then we did a green outline for the ridge mountain line. And then we're just doing some yellow trees on top of this. So that's where we're at if you just joined us. But for anybody that wants to play with colors, there's 3 tones of colors that we're going to use for this tree line. We're going to use this ochre color. I mixed ochre and yellow. I'm going to use a soft orange, and I'm going to put a brighter yellow on these 2. So I'm going to do the orange first. And to make orange, it is 85% yellow with a touch of red. A little red goes a long way. So I'm going to be a little cautious there. But I'm going to mix a little bit of an orange. We're going to use this in different places. You're not going to need too much. And I may switch to a tiny brush for some of this detail. This brush is like medium sized in my opinion, but I'll show you where you can put some of this. You can do some orange texturing, maybe at the bottom of the tree. This is all just really fun detail. So if this stresses you out, you don't have to do this, but I always like to include some level 2 tips for folks that where you want to add in a little extra detail here and there. So I'm just tucking in a little bit of orange on the underside of some of these bushes. Maybe I'll bring in a little bit more ochre just to kind of calm down. You can see how it adds some really, the orange is acting as like, it's a shading element. It's a little bit of a darker color, which is really fun here. But I am leaving some gaps here in the middle for some true shading of the back mountain to come through. So you don't have to have this all connected. Everybody is going to do something a little different. And I fully expect that. But the orange is a little bit of shading, maybe a little foliage happening. Just a few dabs here and there. You can do as much or as little as you wish. And I'm just being thoughtful of the placement. You can always go back and grab that yellow and kind of blend in the orange as a secondary color. But
what size brush are you using for?
I'm using the tip of my number 5 still. I'm just being really intentional to use just the tip. You can always switch to a smaller brush if you want to. But this is what artists do. They have a couple of colors that are similar to one another, and they start blending them, and they have darker tones and lighter tones to bring these objects to life. And we do a bit of this in these classes. But this is the darker tones. We're going to add a lighter tone of orange next. So we're playing with these details here. So they're in the background. Now, we're not going to spend a ton of time. I know many of you could, and you probably would love it. But I want to make sure we can get to all the details for everything else too. So that's just like a little touch of the orange. I'll show you what it is to do a little touch of a lighter color as well. So mine aren't perfect. I can come back to them, not worried. I'm going to make a little bit of a lighter yellow or even a brighter yellow to go on top of these, because I really want these to stand out. In the inspiration, they're really bright in color. So I would say use your yellow and mix your yellow with a little bit of white. So I'm going to experiment with you. I'm going to use, you can grab any size brush. I'm grabbing a smaller brush. This is a number 1. Everybody has different sizes. So if you don't have a number 1, don't worry, it's okay. But I'm going to take a touch of white and a little bit of this yellow. Ooh, baby, this is going to get me that wow yellow that we see on these trees. And they have this color around like the edges of the trees, which is really kind of cool. So I'm just going to gently blend in, and I'm going to focus on the edges of these trees, on these little branches. Maybe I'll do a little bit on the interior. See how that tree just popped with color? So beautiful. Many of us have recognized and seen such foliage before, but I'm just doing a little touch of this light yellow too. Now you can do as much or as little of this as you wish. Again, we're not going to spend too much time here. I want to make sure we get through all the details, but I want to at least show you the technique so you can play with it in your own time. So I'll give everyone a few minutes to play with this. Just using the tip of the brush and just ever so gently using the tip of the brush, the end bristles only, and doing gentle brush strokes, just to feather in a little bit of brightness. And we may even add white as we go, but we're just creating this fun, colorful foliage of trees in the distance. And this is going to be behind the birch trees. And the birch trees are going to go on top. Okay. So I want you to be happy with the number of trees you have in this area. Once you're happy with the number of trees, I'm going to add some leaves and things after, but I'm going to have you paint your mountain in the distance now. And the mountain in the distance, you're going to kind of just paint around what you have. And this was all done intentionally. So these are really, really bright, and you had plenty of paint. But the mountain in the distance, it's going to be this emerald green on top, but then we're going to mix a darker green on the bottom. So we're going to go from a emerald green down to a darker green. Now you can choose the 2 tones of greens that you want. I'm going to go back to this brush that I've made a slight mess of. And I'm going to just dip my brush in a little water. Ooh, look at that. And just kind of work that around. And this is that main emerald phthalo green that I sent you. And I'll create a darker version of this in a few minutes. Now I might need to get a smaller brush to kind of get into these nooks and crannies, but I want you to fill in and paint this mountain in the distance. If this is too green for you, which it's a little green for me, I might grab a little bit of black, a tiny touch of black, and even a little bit of white will give it a little bit more of a gray tone. Oops. Hang on a second. But I want you to find a green that you like. So I want you to be happy with the top color. And then whatever the top color is, I want you to bring it down. It's actually not that bad. I think it will be just fine, the color that I have. And adding a little water to your palette will kind of help break up the thickness of this paint. So just being patient with your paint and kind of working with it, it will have great coverage. So I always like to start at the top of the ridgeline. And I'm going to go around these trees for right now, but I'm going to come down 2/3 the way with this green. And we're just going to do some nice solid brush strokes. We just want this mountain to get filled in. I will put some leaves and things on top of this mountain for the trees, but we just start with the basics here. So come down about 2/3. I'm going to get a smaller brush and kind of pepper this color in between these trees. But while we're using the big brush, you can kind of go around it all. So we typically don't work around objects like this. We typically would paint like these over, but for today's class, I wanted to make sure that these yellow trees in the distance here held their glory, held their color. So I'm just going to come down and just tuck in around these trees, and I'll get a small brush as a secondary step. But you can see how beautiful these trees are. And if you ever want to add more, you can. You just need to mix white with your yellow or white with your orange for it to stand on top of the green. Now, I didn't want you to run out of white tonight. That is why we did this step this way. Because the birch trees are going to take quite a bit of white. So I wanted to make sure we had all the white paint in the world for those birch trees. But just doing some nice smooth brush strokes, and you can see our mountain has appeared. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush to get that green, phthalo green as it is. I don't think I added any black to it. And I'm just going to slowly come in and tuck in around these trees. I'm not going to go in between. I'm just going to tuck in and around so you can see some of these details. You can go on top of the yellow a little bit. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you can see it looks quite nice actually. And these are all just fun details in the distance. This is not the main feature of events here. If anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And I'm going to keep us moving along because there's a lot of details in tonight's class. So everyone works at different speeds. So just know if you want to spend more time on one thing, you don't have to keep up with me for these classes. I go as slow as I can for certain things, but I want to make sure we can get through the details because many of you could spend 2 or 3 hours painting, which I recognize, or even 3 or 4. And it's all good. I respect that. But we do have the video. So if you wanted to kind of finish something your way, you could, but you can see how I'm just tucking in around and that's really standing out quite beautifully. Tucking in just around some of these features. This is a new kind of technique for us. We don't do this technique that often. So it's kind of fun to do something a little different now and again. We're going to add a darker green from the bottom coming up, kind of like a gradient to create some shading at the base of this mountain. It's going to be really beautiful, but we'll do that after. So you can see I'm kind of keeping this area white down here because I'm going to bring in a little bit of a darker color. So I'm not even going to bother painting that right now. Feel free to play some of your favorite music, make a cup of tea. We are going to be here. This is where you can kind of settle in. You can block out my voice, just have some fun. I'm just painting around these trees. Just know you can always fix these trees. Like if you lean back in your chair and you reflect, you're saying, Megan, this tree on the left, it does not look so good. Don't worry, just let it dry. With acrylic, the paint dries really quickly. So you can always come in and you can paint on top of the green or you can paint on top of the yellow. White is our eraser per se right now. So if you need to make any corrections, just let whatever you're doing dry first. Especially if you can see some lines around your trees, don't worry. You can always come in and kind of cover some of those up. So it's not too big of a deal. Try not to be too critical. So you can see I have a mountain in the distance and I have these beautiful trees. The second element to this mountain line is adding in a little shading at the bottom of it. So what you can do is, I'm having a hard time with my black paint. You can, just gonna get this one right now. I'm gonna mix a little bit of a darker green. So it's gonna be a tiny touch of black with this tiny touch of black with this phthalo green. And a tiny touch of black is like literally a tiny little dot. You're not gonna need more than that. And I need more phthalo green on my plate. So I'm going to get a little bit more. And we'll probably use some of this darker color on our birch trees. There's some really beautiful dark birch tree bark like texture. We're going to add some of that today. We're going to get a little crazy. All right. So if it's really dark, don't worry. Maybe just get some water, mix it around. Maybe grab a little bit more phthalo green. It's okay. And I'm using my tiny brush still. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ever so slightly, and I could probably change brushes, but I'm just going to kind of go for it. I'm just going to tuck in this darker mountain color on the bottom. And this is pretty dark. So I'm just going to kind of embrace it for right now. Sometimes with art, you have to just try new things. Painting it on like the bottom part. Now, if you wanted to make yours a little lighter than mine, go for it. Mine is a little dark. I might take a touch of white and mix it in there. Ooh, there we go. That softened it a little bit. A little bit of white will really soften it if folks want to try that. See, it gave me, well, in my light, it actually is a little bit lighter. But you can just take a little scoop of your white and mix it in, and it will kind of give you like a dark grayish green, which is perfect. This is the shaded area kind of behind these trees. And you're just going to come in and you're going to fill in the rest of that white space. So we want your mountain to be entirely filled in. We are going to add trunks for these trees in the distance, but we want to do that on top of this area. So just take a few minutes to just finish in this space. I might even tuck in a little bit of this contrast down here. So it looks like it's sort of continued. This is where you can kind of use your own artist approach, your own eye to build the scene. Maybe there's like a little bit of a tree in the distance. You can get a little crazy. Put a little pine tree in the distance. Maybe there's a couple of dark green pine trees popping up back here. Again, we're not going to spend too much detail, but this is an example of letting your imagination just kind of be in the moment. I kind of put a secondary tree line back here unconsciously without thinking about it. So again, tiny detail. Play with this as you wish, but the goal or the objective is to fill in this mountain ridge line in between these trees. And this color again I used is the Paleo green, black, and a touch of white. And on my palette, this is what it looks like right here. And you don't need very much. This is a tiny little space. We'll need a lot more white paint, let me tell you, with these birch trees that we're going to put on top. And I like continuing this little bit of black here and there. Just kind of helps me kind of continue the eye. And anywhere I have black and I have trees, I am going to come in and put birch, like white birch trunks in here. So those trees kind of stand out a little bit. And I do have some white kind of poking through my trees. I'm okay with that for right now. I can always come in and fix that if I need to. But this is a great starting place. All right. Miss Jean, did you finish your trees yet? She's very one of our detail-oriented participants. All right. So we're going to give everyone a minute to play with that. And then if anybody feels like you're letting this dry, we're going to come back to it. You can paint your sky whatever color you want. Now, to be fair, for those that didn't receive blue, I did not send blue. If you don't have any blue paint in your home, I'll do like an orange sky. I'm going to do something a little different, or maybe a soft yellow. If you do have blue at home, do white paint with a tiny touch of blue, and that will give you your light blue sky. But I'm just going to see what I have for paint colors here on my palette, and that's what my sky will be. So let's see what I got here. First, I'm going to clean my big brush. It's got a little green on it. I definitely don't want green in my sky. So make sure your brushes are clean. Not clean yet. I'm kind of working with St. Patty's juice here. If your cup is green or yellow, it's okay. It's not going to interfere with the paint on your brush. Just make sure your brush spends a little more time in your paint cup to get that paint off. That's the most important thing. And you can use a paper towel. Great use of a paper towel to see if there's any more of that pesky green paint on there. And I can see that I got 99% of it off. So I'm going to do my sky. If you have blue in your house, do white with a touch of blue. Make sure you save some of your white. We are going to use a lot of the white for the trees. So that's my warning or my preface. For my sky, I'm just going to do a little crazy here. So I have a little bit of orange. So I'm going to do a little bit of orange, maybe at the top of my sky. I'm going to do orange to yellow. It's just what's going to happen today. This is spontaneity at its best. It's going to be kind of maybe a setting sky in the distance. Just going to do nice, smooth, horizontal brush strokes. Get the paint away from my arm. That would be good. There we go. And then as I work my way down, I'm going to dip my brush in a little bit of water. So I like to use water in these classes to blend the paints down. So I'm going to put a little bit of elbow in, and I'm going to blend in this orange while it's still wet. Look at this, with a little bit of water. And I'm going to push with my brush in. I'm going to just see what happens. So this is just spontaneity. Painting in my sky. Looks kind of pretty. There is no yellow. This is me just moving the orange around. But apparently, there is a little bit of yellow that was mixed in to make the orange. So you can see it's creating a really fun sky. I really like that. And I'm going to try to keep it lighter above the mountains here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse my brush really well to get the paint off of it. And I'm just going to ever so slightly bring down with a little water. This is like a little bit of a watercolor technique. Bring down a little water See, it's creating just a soft yellow. And I can push to bring that paint pigment down. So again, this is if you don't have blue. I just did orange at the top, and I was using my water to bring down the paint pigment. And I'm leaving a little bit of white above the ridge line for my eye to go to that ridge line. So I'm doing all horizontal brush strokes. I'm kind of doing some scratching. You can do the same techniques, you could do the same brush strokes with your blue that I'm doing with the orange. It's absolutely up to you. If you did blue and you want to do orange, let the blue dry and you can always go in and add orange. But I like it. It came out fun. Oh, there's a little, and you can always use your finger to smudge. Like I just create a little cloud, a little shaded of a cloud kind of coming in. Wow, little Bob Ross is coming through tonight. I don't know. There's just like magic happening. So I'm I'm just being in the moment. I'm reflecting on my work, saying, okay, what else may I want to add in here or there? I like the brightness though. I like the brightness above the mountain a lot. And you can always add that in yours. So if yours is all color, you can add in a little bit of white and bring the white up if you wish. Okay. Now we can still do more work on our mountains. But we're going to do the bottom portion of the painting next. And then we'll do refinement. So a little bit of what's coming next is we're going to let the whole top part dry. We can still make changes. So don't worry if you're not done yet. We're going to do the bottom part next. And then we might add a little shading to the mountains, but then we'll start putting in our birch trees. But this is the fun part of class. We'll check in with everyone and see how everyone's doing. I'm going to remove the spotlight on me. Melody's back. Look at there's her smiling face. Ooh, nice job, Julie. Beautiful. All right. Melody's just smiling and watching, I think. I think she's just attentive here. Nice job, Sharon. Look at your sky. That's so gorgeous. And your trees look good. And we'll add some white birch trunks coming down. Those trees will stand right out. Nice job. And there's Melinda's. Melinda, I love the blue. Keep working on that. Yeah, you can bring it down a bit. Nice job. Some of you have blue. Lori, beautiful. Your mountains look great. You added some nice orange at the base. Do you like the orange, Lori? The orange at the base of the trees. It's pretty, isn't it? Yeah, it's like a nice little foliage touch. Cool. Well, everyone keep on working. I'm going to keep an eye on the clock. I'm going to give everyone a solid 2 more minutes to just get the sky in, maybe 3 minutes just to get the sky in. We're doing good on time. And 3 solid minutes, that's my commitment. And then we'll jump down and do the bottom together. Because our tree detail and the bottom are going to take a little bit of time here. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'm going to play with my mountains a little bit as you all are finishing and playing with your skies. I might add a little bit of shading on top of my mountain ridge. Maybe I want to redefine my mountain ridge in some ways. Some of these details are just so subtle in the distance. We don't need to spend a ton of time. However, sometimes if you have the time, you can come in and these are the details that you kind of appreciate in the distance. So it all depends on how much time you as the artist want to spend working on something. Usually we're kind of painting free at our own will. I'm using a little bit of this dark gray color down here, and I'm just kind of outlining the tops of these mountains, and I'm using water on my brush just to slowly dust it down. So if anybody wants to play with that, you can. There's a lot of different details. There may even be a second mountain layer, a mountain tier. This is going to blow your mind. I'm going to put a little bit of a second hill in here. So if you have a large green mountain and you want to break it up, you can come in here and create a second tier, kind of come down and in between. And I'm just going to use a little bit of this darker green, kind of set the tone on the top space. And I'm going to use my finger to smudge this in. and down, like there's a little shading here. And the nice thing about this type of work is that if you do something you don't like, you can always paint over it. Always, always. So I'm just doing a little bit of a darker hill here just to see what happens. And if I always want to add in another birch tree or two, I can. It's no big deal. And again, we're going to have large white birches on top of this. So I'm not stressing out too much. Just a part of the process here. But I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I think I'll give you all another just 30 seconds, minute or so, just to play. We're going to go to the bottom next. So the objectives I want you to have finished or nearly finished. Again, no rush if you're taking your time. Is the sky is painted, the hills are in, and we're going to move our way to the bottom. And we're going to use all these colors that we used on top on the bottom. So I'm just going to finish painting this hill really quick that I've just decided to fill in here. Art happens. It's all good. It's just about embracing it. Seeing where it goes. There, I have this strange hill in the distance. It's okay. All right, so we're going to move to the bottom next. And this is going to be a really fun part because there's a path and there's lots of birch trees and things. So I want folks to make sure your brushes are clean. So important step. We're going to put trunks on those trees. If the trees look funky, don't worry right now. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our big brush and we are going to go find, if you have that base ochre yellow color, whatever color you used originally to paint these trees, I want you to get that color. For me, I mixed ochre with yellow. That's just what I used. And we are going to do a little bit, we're going to start on the left and we're going to start to fill in this space. And I'm doing soft, gentle brush strokes. You can kind of keep some of the green, it's okay. But do some soft, gentle brush strokes to start filling in this space. You don't need to do big, thick, heavy brush strokes, okay? I'm doing some soft, horizontal kind of swishing. And where you see lightness is kind of like where sun is kind of hitting the field. Okay, we're going to add more colors in here if you haven't already figured that out. But this is just a way of kind of texturing this field in the distance. And we're going to put in a path. So your path can be anything you want it to be, but start to kind of form a path. You can outline a path. It's going to be skinny in the distance. So this is my path. And I'm using white space to hold the path. See that? See if I take my finger and I run it all the way back, that's all white space to hold the path. And you can have a little curve. Now the inside of the path is going to kind of turn and kind of come down to the edge. So there's kind of a path turn here. It could be a road, it could be a path, you get to decide. But we want to hold that with white space. And I'm just going to bring this one fairly straight down. And then we're going to have fun and just do some light swishing. I'm doing a very light hand, like running a brush over a feather over somebody's nose. That's the level of pressure that I'm doing here. And we're just slowly, maybe start on the path line and sweep from the path line over into your field, over into your forest. Try to hold, you can try to hold some white space, but play with your path. If you want to use a pencil to do your path, feel free. Paying attention to those shapes. We're going to stack our trees all in this. If there's any questions, please let me know. But this is just all base coating. So we're going to create this to be like some really fun grass-like texture. So this is just a base coat. And you can see I'm coming in here. I kind of have this path formed, and maybe I'll dip my brush in a little bit of water. And maybe I'll just slowly start to fill in. Maybe I'll grab a little orange. Maybe I'll mix a little orange with a little bit of this ochre. This is where you can kind of have fun with your colors. So there's two things that we're going to do down here, and we're going to add a little green too. So hold some of the white space for green if you're interested. But there's two textures. There's like the base color for this area, but then there's like a little bit of like vertical grass in this. There's like little flowers that are coming up. So this is where I want you to be a little playful, not only with the texture that you're going to create, like a vertical texture for like a grass, or for a or for the base color, but I'm going to mix a little bit of the ochre with a little bit of this orange, and it's kind of like an orangey yellow. I'm going to wipe like a lot of this off. So I kind of have some bristles that have paint on them, but it's not too thick. And I'm just going to come in and have some fun with a little bit of texturing. So I'm just going to do soft little, you can't even see this. Sorry, it's so tiny. Let's see this soft little texturing right here. This is just some soft texturing. Maybe you do some horizontal brush strokes with the orange. Maybe you come in and do some texturing. I'm using the big brush, but you can see I'm starting to add some texture to the space. If you wanted to use a medium-sized brush to do this, my technique is doing some soft texturing. And then I'm going to start to fill in some of this area too. So it kind of has a darker tone as well. So I'm doing a little bit of both. This is where you personally need to be a little experimental. But we're going to add some green in here too. So I'm going to first do a little bit of this orange texturing. And I want it to be really thin texturing. So if you wanted to use a tiny brush, which I'll show you after, but I'm just using the really flat edge. Look at this flat edge of this brush. If you look at just the bristles on the end, it's very thin. But if you wanted to use a different one, you can. But we're just going to add in some texturing. And importantly, adding in some contrast with this orange. So we're going to have a base orange color. We're going to have a little bit of the yellow, and we're going to have green as our next texture, as our next color too. So I'm being intentional to leave some of this space. I want to leave some of the white space for the green. So I want you just to kind of fill in this field any way you wish. And the green is I'm going to mix, and you can kind of bop back and forth between colors. That's okay. I'll probably switch brushes for the green. Maybe I'll use like a medium size, like this is a number 3, but you're going to mix white and green together. So it's kind of like a little bit of a grass green. And to get it to be like a really grass green color, you can add a little bit of yellow too. So I'll show you exactly how to do that. I won't leave you stranded, I promise. So if we're doing 3 colors for textures, you kind of layer them in as you wish. We're doing like a horizontal texture, and then we'll do like a vertical grass texture. But I'm going to make this green. And the green is going to be white, green, and a touch of yellow. So there's white and green. And I'm going to use my, not ochre, I'm going to use my medium yellow or the lemon yellow, whatever one I gave you. And this will give you like a more punchy lime grass green color. And it's a really fun color. Oh my gosh, I've had so much fun playing with these paint pigments. And I grabbed a number 3 brush, but just switch brushes. That's one of the things I just love reminding you. It's like, don't hesitate to switch brushes and try something new. It's all good. See, look at this lime green color. Oh my gosh, I might have to add a little bit of green into it. A little bit more green back into it. But this is the color. It looks so pretty. All right, so I guess we're doing okay here. But you can add as little or as much as this green as you wish. The goal is I want you to be happy with this ground-like texture. Now you can see most of it is golden. And I want you to hold one spot that's golden. So for me, where this bends, I'm going to hold this to be more golden right here. I'm going to hold that. I'm not going to put a ton of green right here, but I'm going to put kind of green everywhere else. because I want the sun to be really bright in this one spot. Okay, that's me theoretically not gonna do anything crazy. Now, I just did the green and they're fairly thick brush strokes. One technique you can do is using a little bit of a dry brush. And it means using your brush and kind of dabbing it and getting as much as the paint off that you can. So you can actually see your bristles on the end. This will help you get a little bit more of like a wispy texture. So for me, I'm just going to play with this a little bit. I'm just going to add a little bit of green here and there. This can be as impressionistic or as specific as you want for this ground. We are going to put trees on top. So just know, like, these are just details. I'm basically alternating. Maybe I'm going in and I just grabbed a little bit more orange. I'm just filling in this space so it feels right to me. So I want you all to just play, do what feels right for you. Maybe adding in a little bit more darker orange on the ridge line. This is where this type of inspiration, it can be anything. I'm putting a little bit of a darker orange kind of back here, just to kind of help draw the eye to this space. That's a little bit of extra red. So if it looks a little darker, it's just a little bit of extra red, which I kind of like. And I'm just doing a little bit of texturing. These dark colors will draw our eye to the shaded areas. And this is a great nature color. So this is like orange with just a little bit more red. I just had a little dab of red and I was getting a little experimental. I'm using this in the distance, just in a few spots, just to kind of ground ourselves. I want to know where the horizon line is, kind of like where the land meets the trees, that line in the distance. So this dark color is really helping me ground that, which I like. So I'm going to encourage you just to bop around from color to color on your palette and just do what feels right. That is my advice. But I want everyone to be working on their bottom land part. And we'll come in and add those trees, those floating trees in the distance. Don't worry about that for right now. But I'm just grounding. I'm going to work my way down. But you can see I just used a little bit of that reddish orange just to kind of ground that line. But you can see how pretty the green is. And maybe your green has a little water on it too. So let's see here. I'll get a little experimental. Let me put a little water on my brush. And I'll make a little water wash with this green. So maybe it's not so thick. So making a water wash is bringing water onto your plate and mixing that around with the paint pigments. You can see it's really watery right here because it's. And let me just try tucking in ever so slightly with the tip of the brush, just tucking in a little bit of green here and there. And maybe I do some green lines, vertical lines to give a little bit of texture. Mine is really abstract. Some of you will have a different style on how you approach this painting, but just know you can do it in layers. So if you're not totally in love with something, don't worry. I'll probably paint over on top of this and add in some more oranges, maybe add in some yellows. If you've done these classes, we do lots of layers, but you can see over here, it's just a good visual reference of what it looks like to bring in some oranges and some greens. It's not all filled in. There's some white showing through, which is fine. But using a little water on your brush to kind of fill in some of those white spots works. So I'm just going to take a little water and a little orange just to kind of gently dust over some areas. If your paint isn't dry, it might get mucky in areas. It's okay for some spots, but you don't want to get like, some of you might have like browns forming. Just let an area dry, maybe go over to the other side. Being patient with our work is important. But this is a great inspiration where we can be playful with the colors and a little experimental. We'll put in some flowers and some like true grass blades after, But this is just some base texturing I want you all to play with. So it might be scary. It might be really ambiguous to some of you. So I applaud you for being courageous and trying. But just start somewhere and have some fun. Maybe it'll all be all oranges and yellows. That's fine. You do you. That's my advice. But I'm just going to make a little bit more orange. Maybe you want to keep it brighter, like some of the yellows. You can go back in and add some of those yellows after. So let's see here. I am going to bring in, I have some yellow right here. Let's bring in some yellow. Remember I said there's going to be a brighter area right in here. Maybe I'll bring in some of my brighter yellows to start filling in this space. Right here around this corner. A little bit brighter here. Again, we're going to put birch trees on top of this. So I am going to keep an eye on the time. Everybody's doing really well. I'm going to make another orange, orangish ochre colors just to kind of fill in. If you want to do this vertical texturing, you can. If not, no worries. I think for anyone that's really detail oriented, you may be leaning to, and I'll tuck in a little bit of green here and there. You may want to use like a really fine brush to be playful with the texturing, but you can do as much or as little as you'd like. I'm just bringing in a little bit of green. I'll probably come in and kind of smooth it out and add some texturing, but I'm just kind of having fun filling in this space over here. You can see I have more deliberate brush strokes over here, and I have more smooth brush strokes over here. I'm sure many of you have different looks. Just find a style that works for you on what you want to incorporate. I'm going to add in just a little bit of the green texturing, vertical texturing. Again, we are putting in big birch trees on top of this entire thing. So just know that we're going to be adding a lot on top of this. So I'm going to put us in a little bit of a time box to fill in this space. I'm going to give us, we're going to check in 5 minutes to see how people are doing just with the base colors in this space. You can see I'm leaving kind of one bright area right here. Has some brighter yellows. I can always come in and make it a little brighter. I'll add some grass in here after with a small brush, like deliberate grass with little flowers. But I'm going to do that after. But this is just the base cover of my field is painted and at a high level. I mixed a little green and yellow together. So I have this kind of fun greenish yellow that I'm kind of fluttering in. So you're going to mix different paint colors, and it's giving a little bit of brightness here and there. So just know that be open to blending new colors. I think that's one of the things I always try to encourage in these classes, because that's what everyday artists do. They don't always talk about that. You might see them do it if you like watch a YouTube video, but talking through the process of blending colors is really quite fun. And if anyone has any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I am going to add some very cute, like orange flowers, tiny little wildflowers and actual grass after. But I want you to be happy with some of these objects. Another thing you can consider adding is more orange in places. So for me, I'm inspired to add a little bit of orange kind of tucked in on this distance line. I love the look of the orange. It's so beautiful. So pretty. So this is where I'm going to keep an eye on the clock. It's 6:03 Eastern time. I'm going to give everyone 3 more minutes. I lost track before. And I'm just going to tuck in a little bit of orange. And if you need it to be brighter, make it brighter. But this is where I always talk about mindfulness in these classes. And this is such a great time for mindfulness. Just check in with yourself and saying, how am I feeling right now? Do I feel relaxed? Do I feel like uptight? Because this is like so much detail. Do I feel open to the process of adding new detail, right? All these things that we're experiencing, but being open and mindful to letting your painting evolve the way it wants is a really special thing. So if you wanted to put little touches of red, just kind of like let your art happen. And if you do something you don't like, you can always cover it up or always paint on it. But this is about being in the moment. And this is one of the most fun pieces of art. So I'll bring this a little closer so y'all can see my funny detail. This is not perfection. This is, I call this abstract. But we all have our own style. And I think we're all learning that about ourselves. We all have our own styles with many things in our lives, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If anyone needs help, if anyone has like, Megan, I have this spot, what do I do with it? You can ask those types of questions. I welcome them. But I'll look through the room here. Lori is in the zone. All right, there's Julie's. Awesome, Julie. Everybody's paths look awesome. If anybody needs to reshape your path, if you need to just tweak it a little bit, white is your friend. You can always reshape your path by covering lines to reshape, to make that line in the distance a little bit more narrow. For me, if I wanted to make this even more narrow, I could take some yellow and I could tighten this path in the distance. And I'll show you because that's a good example of changing the shape of your path. And we're at our 3 minutes here, but I'll give everyone a second. But if I take a little bit of this ochre and I want to change the shape of this, maybe there's too much white here. I need this path to be much skinnier in this space. Look at that. I just made it nice and skinny. Now it's really going around the bend, right? So you can use your colors to change your forms and your shapes. So like this, and this is where you lean back and you reflect on what you have. I could use a little white to reshape that path right there. I'm not going to worry about it too much right now because that's just a little extra character. But we'll shift to doing some additional details. All right. So to be mindful of time, we're at 6 o'clock. We've been painting for an hour. One of the things I want you to consider before we start our birch trees is, and our birch trees are going to take a little while, so I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for our birch trees, is if you wanted to add any more of the trees in the distance, you can. I'm going to keep mine the way they are right now because we're going to add birch trees, really skinny ones on the back side of this land. They're going to be like little tiny white lines. And on top of those, you can add some yellow and oranges. So I think we're going to start there. We're going to do a couple layers of birch trees, starting in the distance of our field, and then we'll do bigger ones as we move our way down. Does that sound good? All right. Cool. So this is like a little bit of depth and dimension with our birch trees. So this is a new process for us. So if anyone is a little OCD about straight lines, I see you and I feel you. Feel free to grab a straight object in your house, like a ruler or a notebook or a magazine or a canvas from a past class, whatever you like. I have a ruler right here. Anything with a flat, and I'm gonna use this just to get some straight-ish birch trees. It's gonna give me some guidance. It'll be a little less stressful if you wanted to grab something. All right, so we're gonna do skinny lines, and we're gonna do a variety of them in the distance. I'm gonna have you grab one of your smallest brushes. I'm grabbing a number 3, so maybe a mid-sized brush. I want you to be able to have a nice fine point on it. This is a number 3, and there's small gold numbers on the sides of these brushes. Actually, this is a number 5. Just grab a skinny one. I think they're all so different. But I know that I'm going to have enough control with this, and I don't want these to be very big. Skinny, skinny, skinny pencil, like not actually skinnier than a pencil. These are like lines. You're going to use your white paint. If you wanted to make a gray, like a light gray, you could. And then we could add white to the trees to brighten them. We could do that. So maybe I'll add a tiny touch of black to this white. And you can squeeze like half the white out of your container. That would be totally fine. And I'll show you, we'll make that gray together so you can see it. So I squeezed about half the white out because we're going to need it. And I'm going to just do a little tiny touch. I think this has some green in it too, but that's okay. Just do a little bit. I'm just going to make it a little bit of a gray tone. And this is where we have patience and we breathe to make the right color. Even though I go fast sometimes, we have to slow down to get the right colors. Mix it around really good. There we go. I'm finally getting a little bit of a gray. Soft, soft gray. It's a little bit more natural, right? Birch trees are often a soft gray. So that's not a white, believe it or not. And add just a little bit more black. I'm going to get a little courageous here. Mix this well. Mine may not have a green tinge to it. That's okay. Nobody will know. Don't tell anyone. Okay. So now that you're mixing this color, I'm going to spin all of the goopy paint off of this brush. So it has a nice fine point. I'm literally taking my brush and spinning it. And I don't have very much paint on there. It's just enough because you can go get more, but it's better to have less than not enough. Okay, this is where we are going to do the placement. We'll do little dots for placement first. And then we will do the lines. So we are going to do, let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Do 7 tiny ones. So and you're going to do them right back here. So I'm going to put 7 little tiny dots and kind of scatter them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I put little dots. God help me, you can't even see those little gray dots for where my little trees are going to go. And these are going to go up and off the page. So once you've kind of marked where you want your little trees to be, you can get your flat edge. And do your birch tree lines. You can get a little bit more paint. These are going to look so beautiful in the distance. Do a couple brush strokes. I'm on the same one and I'm taking my time. See that? There's one. And my picture is bending, so my paper is bending. I'll get some tape here in a minute. Now I'm a lefty. I probably should have started on the left side of my canvas. So tisk tisk for me. Let me move this up. And I'll get a piece of painter's tape to tape my corner back so it's not bending on you. But that is straight as proof. But the straight edge will give us a little more confidence. I'm just doing skinny little lines. You can do a couple coats while you have this flat edge. If you're not doing a flat edge, that's fine. These are tall trees in the distance. And I'm going to perfect these a little bit. So these are just baselines. Once you have these basic lines in, you can come in and refine. So my lines are not all the way filled in. They're like 80% there. You can stagger the base of these trees too. If you want one to come down a little lower, that's okay. And you can do that after. You can always kind of make the base come down a little lower to stagger them if you wanted to, but this is going all the way off the top of your page. And this is a really layered, beautiful scene. And we're going to put so many trees in here. You can do as few or as many as you wish. There, see how that tree came down a little further? See the bottom of this one is a little higher than this one. This means this tree's getting a little closer. This flat edge is really helpful. Just taking my time. You can always change again how long or where these trees land. You can, a little bit of mindfulness and reflection, figure out where those end up. Some of my trees are a little, they're not perfect. So I have a little bit of green right here that got a little wide, a little white birch that got a little wide. I can come in here with my darker green and like trim that up. I'm not too worried about it. And it's fun to have some of these trees like kind of close to each other. So I have one over here that's going to be right close to this one. That will be fun. So these are kind of like tall saplings in a way. And then just look for those dots on where you want to end the tree. Nice. And I will put a piece of tape. Let me go get a piece of tape so my trees aren't bending for you. And then if you want to put in another one somewhere, feel free to do that. Just eyeball your own painting. And I love these. I just stepped away, ladies and gents, and what a beautiful scene that we're creating. So if you haven't walked away from your painting yet, you try that. It's going to be really fun. All right, there's my painter's tape to hold that corner back. I typically paint on paper in these classes. They are less space. So I have one more little tree to do. You can also use your paper towel and kind of wipe off your edge along the way if you don't want it to smudge. Helpful tip. I'm sure all of us will have some type of smudging, let's be honest, but that's all right. And I'm going to do my one last birch right here. Birch in the distance. And this one is closer to this one over here. Really fun. Now this is where I'm going to wipe this off. Once you're done with your flat edge for right now, you can kind of wipe it off and stick it to the side. Now these skinny trees have little branches kind of coming off of them. They are a little bit of a gray color. So if anybody wants to just take a minute to grab, I have like a greenish, blackish blue color, but I made like, I'll show you. I'm going to go in and put in a few really skinny branches off the top of these trees just for extra detail. This is optional, but I mixed like black and white together. Apparently I had a little green in it, but this is just kind of a grayish color. I have a nice flat edge on this brush. Whatever brush you're using, have a nice little flat edge. And then I'm going to do some kind of horizontal, just a few branches, kind of alternating one side to the other. Just a little bit of nature happening to these trees. I'll bring this a little closer so you can see it in a minute. So you can actually see it pretty well. I just added a couple of branches just kind of at the top of this tree. If you want to have fun and add like a little bit of like birch detail, like little bark bits to add some texture, this is like tiny little detail. You can use this darker green to kind of create a little bit of soft texture. I'm using just the bristles on the end of this brush. And you can make these branches as long as you want. Just use your eye. They can be as short or as long as you want. There's also some yellow on some of these branches. So if anybody wants to do some of these branches as an option, I'm just going to alternate from one tree to the other. These branches are sort of horizontal, sort of angled, diagonally. There's small sticks kind of coming off. Find whatever brush gives you a nice fine tip. That is the most important advice. So you can see here, this is just tiny detail. We're going to be putting big birches, again, still on top of all this, but sometimes we don't slow down to add these types of details. I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to play with this if you want to. Maybe branches are overlapping one another, but try alternating from the left to the right side. Some of these primary branches have little secondary branches off of them. I'll bring this closer and just hold it here so you can see it for a minute. You can use
Excuse me,
this.
Megan,
Yes, ma'am.
what color did you use to make the branches?
This is like, it's white and black, so it's a gray, but mine had a little green tinge to it. So it's like a soft sage green kind of. It's right down here. Mine's like a soft sage green. That's the easiest way I can describe it. Just any gray, anything, like I would not use white. You want it to be a little darker than white. Just gonna do a little texturing. You don't need to do a lot of this. I definitely don't want to go too crazy. I'm just going to stop doing these branches because I'm going to add a lot more stuff, but I might go in and add some more yellow in some areas over here. Like I might put in some more yellow. We'll see. But these are the things you can always do after class too. If you wanted to bring some of the branches down lower, you could. Doesn't matter. You can see I brought a few of those branches down on top of the green. That looks really pretty for consideration. It's the point of experimenting. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And you can do a little outlining maybe of this tree. In between some of these branches, do some shorter, like stick-like branches. It will help it make it look a little bit more natural. So I'm just working my way over. I maybe have, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 little branches on each of these trees. But it's not really about numbers. It's just about going for the look that you want. I do like putting in a few of these branches on the green. It looks really pretty because it's contrasting the dark mountains in the distance. So you could try that if you wanted to. Again, these are some of the details that we don't always have time for in these classes. However, there's an opportunity to have fun with these details. So I'm going to take advantage of it for you all. And if it's too much detail for you, just keep plugging away on whatever's more relevant. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And I'm just alternating, just finding a rhythm that works for you is the best thing that you can do. And what I've learned about painting trees over the years is don't look at each branch for what it is, kind of look at the overall composition of the tree. Lean back in your chair and say, well, do I need a branch over on the right to balance it out? And that's why I say alternate from the left to the right side of the tree, because trees have short and long branches all over. So if you stagger from the left to the right and you do short and long branches, you will likely make it look natural, but it doesn't need to be uniform. Like they don't all need to be X inches on this side and then 2 inches on this side. You can have it be different. That's what will give it that natural look. So just keep that in mind. You don't need to be super structured. Just lean back and reflect on the overall shape of the tree, and it will help you and guide you on where you want to put something. no one's ever really explained it to me that way. It's just how I've kind of interpreted creating objects over the years. Takes a lot of practice too. So if your trees don't look like this, don't worry. This is like 5 straight years of painting trees. So I probably told you this, but my husband's like, your art's getting better, Megan. I'm like, yeah, because I'm painting more, Dan. Many of you probably heard me say that. So funny. It's like, oh, that one's good. I'm like, thanks. And I'm sure your partners will say that, and your friends will say that about your work too. I know that I am so proud of many of your artwork evolving over the past couple of years that you've been painting with us. And if you're new to the party, a warm welcome. We're so glad you're here. I hope you can join us again in the future. Okay. So we have some of these trees in, right? We've added some branches. If you want to add any more yellow or anything anywhere else, you could do that now. I am tempted to add a little bit. A little scared, but I think I'm not going to right now. I think we're gonna progress on. With this tiny brush, you can give those lonely little trees in the distance, tiny little, I'm going to use this gray that I've created, and I'm going to give these birch trees in the distance a trunk. And you can go about almost to the top of the tree, not all the way to the top, but you can give it a solid trunk down. Look at that. It's finally coming to life. I probably went 2/3 the way up, and you can do a solid gray line down the middle of the trunk to the ground. See that? So cool.
Oh.
And then you can give it little branches from the interior. And that will bring our trees to life just a bit in this space. And you can use that same technique. If you want this to be a little darker, you could too. So I'll be a little courageous and just make it a little darker for you. Oh, I just added like a tiny gray line next to the white, or even on top of it. This just adds a little bit of shading. So this is a little bit of a level 2, but if you wanted to do white and a gray down here on these trees, that's the kind of look it will give. Not sure I love it, but I'm just gonna kind of roll with it for right now. Guess what? Because I can always cover it up if I need to. I might come in with a little bit of orange or yellow and kind of touch it up a little bit. But if anything, coming in with that white line, it's a little more subtle. Kind of grounding those trees in the distance with this gray color that you used for the birch trees. And kind of ground any objects in that may need it. So I grounded that tree 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I did these little stumps down here too. But if you don't like any of this, excuse my arm, you can always kind of paint over it. So as an example, if you don't like, uh-oh, I got mixing colors here. If you don't like the way this comes out, or if you wanted to bring this orange down a little bit, you can always come in with a little orange and kind of fluff out the bottom of your trees. These are all the touch-up details. You don't need to be overly critical, but just to show you what it's like. You need to cover up any of this dark space. You can always use orange to kind of come in and soften something or add new texture. This is the layering process of painting. It's just doing more layers until you're happy with it as the artist. Okay. So we're not going to spend too much more time here. We did great on these birch trees. We're going to continue. We have about 30 minutes left to the class in total. We'll probably be done sooner than that, but we're going to let these birch trees dry in the distance, and we're going to add the next round. So take a minute to, and we're not going to do our flip and reveal yet. We're going to wait. Actually, it could be a fun time to see how everybody's doing before we add the big ones. What do y'all think? Give me a thumbs up if you want to do it now. Give me one more minute if you want to wait. All right, I have minutes. People are busy. I got some thumbs and I got some minutes. All right. So my birch trees, I haven't added a ton of like dark texture to these. That's okay. It's just an element. So there's a couple of things that we need to do before we finish today's painting. We're going to add in the big birches next. We need to add in some of the orange flowers in the grass, and then we're going to do our path and our shading. So that's definitely going to take a half an hour. So due to time, I'm going to jump into the birch trees next. I am going to have us use our large brush or the next size down that I sent you. I would use the medium brush that I sent you. It's not the biggest one, but it's the next size down. And for me, folks could check your audio. I'm just going to look through here. Might have been Gabby who just joined. Welcome, Gabby. All right, I muted Gabby. I'm using a number 3. It's like a big number 3 though. This is kind of my medium sized brush tonight based on what I have in front of me. And we're going to do dot placements for the trees before we get started. And we're going to use that same whitish grayish color. If you need to make more, take a minute to make some more, but I made plenty. And we're going to do some thoughtful dotting here. So what we're going to do first is we're going to do placements of these big ones. So there's like 3 big ones. So some of you may have a larger space on one side compared to where I do. The biggest trees are going to be over here on, if you have a larger side. So where the bend, kind of the curve bends and comes back. This is my larger space. I don't want to cover up these little trees. So I'm going to kind of do my bigger trees around them. And the bigger trees are going to be down towards the bottom. So I'm going to do, I can see these 2 trees are here. So in between these trees, I'm going to do a big tree. So I'm just going to put kind of a large white mark down here of where I want one of my big trees to be. And this is where the bottom is going to be. And we're doing planning, right? I'm going to do another big tree over here. It's because it's on the other side of the skinny one, because I kind of want to see the skinny one too. I'm going to do another big one over here. I'm going to come up a little higher. So I'm going to do another dot in this area for where I want another big tree to be. And I staggered it up a little bit, which you can see. And then we're going to do another big one over here. So it's kind of like a 1, 2, 3 trifecta. And I was going to just painting a little bit so I know where they are. And then you can kind of do a couple more dotting. So maybe I'll do one here and I'll do one on the side. And maybe I'll do one more kind of skinny one over here. This is the placement of the bottoms of trees that I'm going to put in. They kind of look like stumps right now, like somebody cut them down and they were there, but we're actually going to do the opposite. We're going to build up. Before we paint those in, I'm going to come over here and do any more trees on this side. Now on the other side, there are a couple bigger trees. So for me, I am going to figure out, well, where I want to put them. So there's a big space right here. I'm going to do one right here. And I may not want to do too many. So I'm just going to do another one here and here. I'm just going to do 3 more over here because I can always add more. So find the placements, look at the heights of those trees, and then you can go in and paint them and use your straight edge. You can do the middle line first, like for the center of the trunk, just to get your bounds. And you might paint over some of those cute little branches. That's okay. And you can kind of shift your straight edge over if that's helpful for you. But it's always good to start skinnier with these trees. And then you can always take your edge away. If it's smudging, just take it away. You may be able to just freehand these trees, just going up and off your canvas. I might just freehand some of these trees. Again, I'm going to wipe my flat edge. I'm going to be a little courageous here. You want your edges to be nice and clean. So I like to use my pinky to stabilize my hand. Some of you do that, some of you don't. It's okay. You could hold your canvas. If some of you are painting flat, you'll find your own techniques. The tree's a little wider at the base. It's a little skinnier towards the top. So towards the top, it can be a touch skinnier. Take your time. My trees are more of a gray. It's okay. We can come in with white and brighten them. I'm going to freehand some of these trees to see how it goes. If your brush isn't working for you, don't worry. Switch brushes if you need to. Just check yourself. Check and see if you need to do that. As you do these full brush strokes to fill in your trees, say, do I need to change to a different brush or is this working for me? You can see this tree is a little wider at the bottom and I'm going to make it a little more thin at the top. It's easier to start with a thin base tree and then make it thicker. Just take your time, there's no rush. You all have the supplies courtesy of AARP Vermont. Again, a big thanks for them having us. You can see that the Green Mountain might shine through. That's where we do a couple coats, right? We have a little patience with the process. That's why we held space earlier with our beautiful trees in the distance. And we painted around them so we could have that nice vivid color, because we would have had to use a lot of paint on top of those green trees. And if the color isn't sticking, just do one layer. You can say I have some layers of trees over here. Then you go back in and always do a second layer. Always, always. So I'm just going to work my way over here. I'm just going to turn this for a minute. Get a nice straight line. Some of you may be using that flat edge still. I probably should be doing that as well. However, I'm apparently a risk taker. All right. And I'm going to kick myself if these trees are too thick. All right. If anyone needs any help, please let me know. I feel like you're all on track here of gently painting our trees in. The base of the trees are a little wider. Go nice and slow. I'm doing a single brush stroke from the bottom of the tree up or the top of the tree down. I can always reshape these trees if I need to. It just takes a little bit more effort, right? At the bottom of the tree, if it's a little wider, it will look more like a tree than a phone pole, but you can play with that after. I have a lot of phone poles, but this one I'm making actually look like a tree because I'm making it a little wider at the bottom. There we go. Less phone pole-like. All right, so I'm going to do another one here. Again, the dots on the bottom help for a little bit of mindful placement, right? Before you, and you can start at the bottom, like I just did here, kind of build out how wide you want it to be, and then work your way up for consideration. And yes, we're painting over some of these cute little trees in the distance, but we knew that they were there, right? So they're still there in our hearts. And it's good that we're getting all these layers on. We're letting things dry as we're painting because we're going to add in some really fun birch-like detail. We're doing good for time. Try not to be too meticulous. I mean, you can be as detailed as you wish. The edging on these trees are not perfect, but I know that I can always go back and modify those. But my goal for the next 5 minutes is just to fill in these trees as a base layer so we can go in and finish up the rest of the details for today's class. I think we could all easily spend 2.5 to 3 hours on this painting, but we'll be a little mindful of dinner and resting and all those things. Some of you might have had a long day. This might be exactly what you need. Filling in the bottom of this tree a little wider. And we could do some kind of grass coming up onto the bottoms of the bases of the trees. This is again a gray color. I'm painting over my little beautiful little tree in the distance here, but I know it'll be okay. In the distance, it's behind it. I know it's there. But I think those were really worth it, doing those details in the background, because it adds so much depth and personality by having some of those things. And that's why we did it. That's why we took the time to paint those in. And doing a nice, smooth, consistent brush stroke is a good thing. Your trees don't have to be perfectly straight either. I'm sure many of you know that, and I don't have to say that. Anywhere that, you want to go in and do a second coat on these trees will need a second coat. So if you see any little branches poking through, if you see those green mountains, just get this paint and go in and just do another quick second coat. It takes just a minute. It's way easier than doing that initial outline per se. But we want these trees to pop. So we will add a little bit of white paint to these trees. This gray is an undertone. So let's get all those base trees in first. I have 2 more. Oh goodness, 3 more over here to paint. I got to get on it here. And then we'll go in. And we'll bring these to life with our birch bark. We'll come in and we'll add some grass at the bottom of these so they don't look cartoonish. We'll make it look a little more natural on the bottom. And we will add shadows if you're interested. And the path is also going to be a gray color. So I'm just doing a nice solid coat for these trees. Almost done. And this tree is going to kind of be off the page a little bit, and that's kind of fun. Kind of doing things off the page gives an illusion like your world is going to continue outside of this painting. It's an extended version of itself. It's kind of fun. All right, so I'm just going to do the base outline for this tree. If anybody wants to use this gray paint to paint your path, you're welcome to. I'm just going to take a little bit of this gray and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of yellow, and I'm just going to paint the path ever so slightly. I want it to be still fairly light in color. So what I might do is I might just dip my brush, get some of the paint off of it using the same brush, and I'm just going to slowly, just gently fill it in. I still want to see it, but I'm just kind of making it, I'm filling it in, I'm blending it in. And this is just a little bit of the gray and a little bit of like a yellowish color. It has a little bit of a green tone to it too, but you can see I'm leaving some of the edges of the path a little bit lighter, and I'm using water. So we're using water-based paints. And one of the things we're starting to introduce in our classes is just doing some more watercolor techniques with our acrylics, because you can use your acrylic paints to do watercolor type of projects, which is really fun. And we actually have a guest instructor that's going to be joining us actually on Sunday. She's going to be teaching the Sunday class. So if anybody is joining us on Sunday as well for fun, her name is Azadeh. She's working with me. She's based in New York City. She's lovely. She's going to start teaching some of these classes because she's super talented. And I love giving her an opportunity to contribute in these new ways. All right. So my trees are drying, super important. I painted my path this like soft yellowy color. It's like yellow and grayish color. just to kind of fill it in. I just took a little bit of my blackish blue color here and I mixed it with a little bit of gray. And I'm going to do a little bit of shadowing, like shadows next. And you can see it's this like bluish gray green color. It's really quite pretty. I don't know if I'm going to be able to replicate it, but I can try. But it was white. I think it was white, gray, and green basically. And we're going to do some shadows. And I'm using my number 3 brush. And you want to pick a direction for your shadows. So for me, there's a shadow on this tree. And I'm just going to go gently, ever so slightly across the road. I'm going to probably make a little bit of a water wash. So it's softer in color, softer in pigment. So I'm doing a couple of hefty droplets of water and making this watery. And kind of spinning it so it's not all paint, but it's more loose. And I'm going to continue this kind of all the way straight, like the tree is reflecting all the way over here. And whatever this line is the line you're going to use for all these trees. So the example is, I'm going to take this one. Uh-oh. And I'm just going to go straight down. This is where water is your friend. So this is where we're creating, again, I did water. And if you don't want to do this, you don't have to, but it's a really kind of a cool look. And you can be thoughtful of like where you want to, like what type of lines you want to put in. So I'm doing some like streaking lines and I'm doing some fill-in lines, but that makes it look a little bit more natural, right? So let's see. Some of these, so these lines are all coming here, which means some of these trees, you don't have to go all the way over, but maybe we just come down a little bit. You see there's just a little bit of shading kind of coming in for some of these trees. And I'm just gently dusting this on top. The reason I'm doing this now is because I am going to do flowers and grass kind of on top of the shadow. So it looks a little bit more natural. So I'm just doing a gentle feather-like dusting to create these shadows, this shading, these shadows of the trees. And I have water on my brush and I'm doing it really gently. So I can still see all the colors. Maybe you add a little bit of the shading kind of back in the back of the woods to create a little bit of depth kind of under these trees. There's just a little water on this brush. And then maybe I do the same thing. You want to hold fairly similar forms. Lean back in your chair and reflect along the way as you're doing this. And if you get it on the tree, just kind of like wipe it off. You can do it as dark or as soft as you wish. Just try to maintain that same. It's like the sun for me is coming from that back corner. So the direction of your lines is basically, I don't know, the contrasting colors are really punchy. They kind of look great though. So you can play with how much paint pigment is on your brush. Right? I kind of like having a little bit more solid of a line, and you can play with this. It's quite pretty. You can add a little bit of this gray, maybe to the base of your tree, to add a little shading to the base of your tree. This is water in this like grayish color. Just a little bit of shading to the bottom of these trees, maybe up. For me, I'm kind of going up the left side on the bottom and on the bottom. You can see the shape of that. And I have water and that color on my plate. So it's very liquidy. It's transparent. And you don't need very much. Oh, I forgot a shadow over here. Whoopsie. But you can play with that. I'm just going to pause. You can also use your finger to kind of smudge in some of this gray if it shows up too dark. I love smudging with our fingers. So we're just playing with some of these shadows. Base of the trees. We're going to add some birch bark and some white in just a minute. So you can see that there's different shadows that are going to go on the road based on the position of your trees. It's going to look different for everybody. Like in the inspiration, there's a lot more like lines on the tree because the position of my trees were a little bit different. So just embrace the position of your trees and just do the shadows based on those. And I can always come back and play with those shadows. That was a good start. In the picture, they're a lot darker in some instances, but I'm just gonna let it settle for right now and then maybe come back in. But there's additional details that we're gonna do in the next 10 minutes. The most important one is some of the birch bark detail. So we'll do that first because we have about 10 minutes left. I'm happy to go over, but I want to be thoughtful of everyone's time. I want you to grab, we'll do some of the black birch bark detail and then we'll do white highlighting after. So grab your black. I lost my black. Here we go. Hiding on me. If you want to do dark gray, you can. In the picture, the birch bark details like little rounded dots, which is kind of fun. So I'm going to grab one of the smallest brushes that I have, and I'm going to put a little bit of black paint on it. And if the black is super scary for you, feel free to grab a little bit of white and make like a dark gray. So I'll do that just as an example. Okay. I'm going to make just a dark gray just so it's not so dark. And I'll do white after. So I'm just going to make a dark gray and I'll mix this with you so you can see it. It's going to still be really dark because that's what we want, but I'm just going to show you what the dark gray looks like. Perfect. And then I'm going to mix that well, and I'm going to spin my brush along the way. So I don't get any black paint on my bristles and I don't have any white paint, and that helps it blend a little bit. So we got to be a little abstract here with our birch detail. So I'm going to pick the big one in the middle first, and it's kind of piecey, like it's kind of coming up on the sides. It's kind of rounded, but you can do it any way that you wish. So if you just want to do little spots, if this is too dark for you, I don't want you to obviously have I don't want you to have like cow spots on your tree. But this detail is a little different than others, but there's just small little dots here and there. Maybe you just use the bristles on the end, and they're really tiny as you work your way up. So I'm just doing little dots and dashes, kind of alternating from the middle of the tree. And there's more kind of down here at the bottom. And maybe we do a little bit of outlining, gentle outlining. And this is where you can play with just doing some light dusting of the color. And you can just do some really soft outlining in spots. And I'm dragging the brush on. And if this is too dark for you, then for me, it's a little dark, but I'm trying to be a little courageous here. One of the things you can do that will help with this is adding a little bit of shading to the tree. So I added a little bit more white to my plate, and I'm going to make just like a little bit of a gray to kind of help us transition to the dark color. I think that will help. So I'm making a gray here. It's kind of near on my dark one, but I'm kind of creating an intermediate gray because that will give us a good transition. And what you can do is you can outline. You can, what they have actually is, it's the middle of the tree is a little darker in spots. So maybe use your finger, and or you use a little water on your brush. Let's try a little water on our brush. Let's see if that works. A little watery gray in the middle of the tree in spots, and then maybe we smudge it with our finger. There we go. That gives us a little bit of fun texture. So maybe a little watery gray. You can always cover this up with like a little white if you want to. But I'm doing a little watery gray and just some spots. So maybe do a little spot up here, smudge your finger in, do a little spot up here, do a vertical smudge. This is a little bit easier to the eye than that darker color, in my opinion. So I'm just doing little spots of this watery gray and I'm blending it in with my finger. If you like this darker contrast, which you can see now, you can still do that. If you wanted to do both, you can. I'm probably going to do both. I'm just going to do a little spot of this and a little spot of that. But this is where we all experiment, right? So maybe this one will come in here. Maybe this one will come in here. And then you can come in with white as a highlighter. So the black contrast definitely stands out. You can always come in and lighten it up anywhere you want to, but you can play with this birch-like detail. So if you wanted to do like traditional, like birch kind of hash, like horizontal like texture, you can do that too. I love using my finger to smudge. So I'm doing a come in from the left, come in from the right, and then you can kind of smudge it in. I'll bring it a little closer so you can see it. So if you wanted to do like a little bit of a left and a little bit of right, and then smudging it in will give you some texture. If you like the darker texture, like on this one, I do like, there's something about it that I like. It's a little scary because it's just so bold. But doing little bits of these little bit of black with the tip of your brush, just kind of working your way up. This is where I'm happy to experiment for you. But like little, using the tip of your brush, I'm just doing like alternating from the left to the right side. And hardly any paint, but that's kind of a birch-like detail. And it doesn't have to be exact left to the right. And you can use your finger to smudge it if you want to. If you don't like the smudging, you can cover it up. Not a big deal. So that's just some detail you can play with. So that's just, and for me, I have some darker areas here. Guess what? I can come in with a little bit of white. This is the best thing about art. Ready? This is the really fun part. Anything you don't like, especially with birch trees, come in with a little bit of white paint and paint on top of it. So white is like our final product here. So anywhere you want to add this true brilliant white birch, look at this. I'm just touching in a little bit of white birch. I could even smudge it down, which probably will look really cool. And that gives you a little bit of texture. So again, if you don't like all this darkness, you can put white paint right on top of it. Use your finger to smudge, maybe. You can control this. So it's just about being in the moment and having fun with it. But just try adding maybe a little bit of gray texture first. That's what I'm going to do. And then we're close on time. So I'm going to give you all a minute to play with this. And then I'll show you, you can do grass-like detail on the undersides of your trees. So sorry, there's so much detail here for tonight's class, but I think it was fun and it's definitely worth it. If anyone has to go soon, I certainly understand. I want to thank you for joining us. But I'm adding just a little bit of this dark gray, kind of alternating. And I'm going to lean back in my chair, and I like the black. I really do. I think I just have to grow on it a little bit. If I lean back, I'm like, oh, I do like it. It's a little scary putting it on, which I think is something that we all might feel, but it does look very cool. And it looks black to me, but it's actually a dark gray. I'm just going to do little spots of it here and there. Dark gray. If anyone wants to join that St. Patrick's Day class, I have a free class on March 15th. We're doing like St. Patrick's Day pets. It's going to be super fun and silly. Please let me know. If you are not able to get into the March classes, they're both sold out. Please drop your name and your email in the chat window below, and happy to include you. So I am being playful. Anywhere that I feel like I add too much, guess what? I can go in with some white paint and brighten it right up. So I'm just being a little courageous here with the birch detail. I'm going to go in with a couple tones. So like a black, like this darker gray, I might go in with white, I might go in with gray, just to kind of add some different levels of brightness to this. I'm going to come in with some white and just show you what that looks like. I'll also do the grass in just 1 minute if folks are hanging on for that, like how to kind of add some more texture to the bottom. I'll show you that in just a minute. So you could easily come in with like a lighter color or even a darker color and do some accents. And there's shading we can do on these trees. We didn't do a ton of shading or depth because we just ran out of time, but you could do a dark line if you wanted to down the sides of these trees. In the inspiration, there's actually a lot of brightness coming from the back of these trees. They actually have lightness on both sides of the trees. So like doing a white line, that's what the inspiration has. Doing white lines on both sides of the birch will create a glow from behind. I'm going to do that. I think it'll be really cool. I'm not going to do it right now, but I think that would look really neat. All right, I'm going to stop my birches here for a minute. I have a bunch of detail down. I'll show you how to do a little bit of the grass down below. And I'll probably do a little bit of the yellow just to add a little bit of brightness. Let's see what I have for colors left here. I'll probably do the ochre and the yellow mixed together. And if anyone has to leave, totally understand, but I'll hang out for a few more minutes. So I'm mixing yellow and ochre together. And I'm using a brush that just has a nice fine tip on it. This is a number 1. And I'm going to do some thin grass, specific detailed grass light structures kind of coming up. And I'm going to see if this will work. I might have to add a little bit of white to it, but we'll see. So at the bottom of these trees, I can just do a little bit of grass kind of coming up. And maybe I'll do a couple tones of colors. I'll do this yellow ochre color, and then maybe I'll do an orange. This is just kind of covering the base of the trees so you don't have just the base of the trees. So I'm just adding a little bit of grass-like detail. It's really just covering. I'll bring this a little closer so you can see it. So I'll do this one right here, just grass-like to cover up the base of that tree. And I might come in with like an orange, or I don't want to use a red, but let me see what I got here on my palette. Probably come in with an orange. Let me just make an orange really quick. And there's a little bit of orange as like a shaded color. So you could consider that. There's a lot of different things you can do. They have some really beautiful little wildflower, like orange wildflowers that are just so cute. They're kind of like tucked in on the roadside right here. So I could just do a little bit of like a little dusting of like little orange flowers kind of tucked in. They're little dots. Those are my orange flowers. Maybe, but you can have fun. These are where you kind of, you embrace the details for what you want them to be. But I love some of this detail. This is where you can kind of bring your ground to life, right? So I'm touching in a little bit of oranges and reds here and there. I love the look of that. Maybe over here, I just do, these are just little brush strokes. Again, kind of grass-like brush strokes. I'm using like an orange-ish red here, just to kind of add some texture to this ground. So you may or may not like that. Play with your own texture. I'm doing vertical grass-like texture, but it's making it look a little less boring. But alternate between an orange and maybe go grab some of your ochre. Alternate between these colors as you're adding texture. And it takes practice to do this, but we're all practicing, we're all having a good time, right? So I'm just coming in and just tuckering in different things. Maybe I'll pupper in a couple of these little flowers here and there. In my head, they're flowers. They're little red dots. But you can see it just added some really simple texture in between the shadows. My birch trees still don't have enough detail on them, but it's okay. But what I'll do is I'll stop and I'll check in with each of you. Many of you are still here. I want to thank you for joining and staying with me. Let's see here. I'm going to unpin myself. And if anyone has anything I can help you with for final steps, let me know. But let's take a look. Beautiful work. Oh my goodness. Some of you went in with that white. Very nice, Jean. Jean, that looks like a river versus a path. Maybe that's what you did on purpose. You turn those paths into rivers. Who cares? Beautiful job, Sharon. Oh my goodness. Melinda, I love how you held white space on your mountains. Doesn't that look stunning? And you went in with that black, Melinda. I'm proud of you. You went with that dark color and look at the contrast it gave you. Really nice. Gold star from Melinda using those dark colors. Oh, Bridget, look at you. Bridget, that's beautiful. I hope you love it. It looks really nice. Your shading came out great. There's Miss Marie. Marie, I couldn't see yours because the blur. You might have to turn off your blur. I see a path on Marie's, but I don't see much else. Maybe a big tree.
Let me fix that. I'm trying to.
Yeah, I want to see it. But I mean, everybody's textures are all so different, right? I love the dark on the trees. I'm definitely going to finish that.
I don't see anything to make it not blurry.
Okay, let's see here. So where it says stop video, there's an upward icon.
Yes.
And it says maybe choose virtual background, and then you would click none, and yours blur is probably on. You want to click none. There we go.
Okay.
That worked. Oh, nice. Your trees, Marie, came out beautiful. Tell us about the process for you. Was it easy? Have you done these birch trees before?
No, but I'm an avid hiker and birder, and I've really studied them. So
You knew that they had contrast. You knew that
Yes.
dark color was there.
Could Marie hold hers up once more?
Yeah, hold it up. I'll spotlight hers. We have to see hers
Thank
much
you.
closer.
I just didn't get to see hers.
No, it's so pretty. Look at the
Oh, it's
contrast.
beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
you did some beautiful dark grays on one side of the tree to add shading. You did a really nice job. Thank you so much for sharing that.
No beautiful. problem.
Yay. You better frame that one.
Oh, yes. I want to work on the background trees a little, but this is a framer.
Yay. Oh, you all should be so proud. Keep working on these. I know that I will for sure. I'll hang out for a little bit, but I want to thank you again all for joining. Tonight's was a little more challenging, right? A little more patience, a lot of detail, but it's good to kind of sprinkle in all these different types of classes. But most importantly, I hope you loved it. It has a lot of character, that's for sure. Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you all for being here. Be sure to drop any contact information into the chat so I can follow up with you for the next class. But thanks for being here. I hope you all have a great night.
Thank you, Megan.
Yay.
Megan,
All
you
right.
said AARP is going to automatically send the recording.
They will. Yes.
Request that from you. Okay.